Hello and welcome to another episode of 2 Minutes with Tim here on Heavenward Thinking. Today I want to challenge you on 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verses 9 through 10, so I'll read it and we'll get right into this week's challenge. But he said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses and insults and hardships and persecutions and difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong." These verses should be a great encouragement for you and I when we look at and see what Paul is writing here. He was pleading 3 times with the Lord to take away a thorn in his side, something that was afflicting him. He asked for God to take it away, but instead of taking it away, God said to him that his grace would be sufficient for him and that his power would be made perfect in his weakness. And that same concept applies for us in our weaknesses. Sometimes we ask God to take something away from us, something that's afflicting us in many different cases in our lives. Whatever it may be, we ask for God to remove it, but sometimes God in his infinite wisdom chooses not to do that and says, "Listen, my power is going to be made perfect in your weakness. I can work through you." And he does that for different reasons. Sometimes it's to keep us from being prideful, where we have to depend on God rather than depend on our perceived perfection or what we would like to have as perfection. Instead, we rely on Christ. And we see that perspective that Paul shares with us here. He then says, "Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me." And then he proceeds to go on and explain what he delights in, things that you and I wouldn't think are delightful: weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, difficulties. We tend to avoid those at all costs. But what Paul is saying here is he's delighting in those, not because they're fun things to go through, not because he loves those things, but because he loves the fact that when he is weak, Christ is strong in him. And it's often in our hardships and our hard moments, it's often in our weaknesses that Christ's power is able to be magnified in our lives, and he's able to get the glory rather than us taking the glory and the credit. When he uses imperfect people like you and I, when he uses weak people like you and I, he's able to get the glory because we have to rely on him. And then other people, when they see us, they see him shining through rather than us just in a perceived mode of perfection. Instead, we're pointing to Christ, and we see that his power is made perfect. Not our power, but his. And so I would challenge you this week to rely on Christ's power, not your own, and to take delight even in your weaknesses, as Christ is able to do extraordinary things through you and in the lives of those around you. That's our challenge for this week, and I hope you'll join us next time for another episode of 2 Minutes with Tim here on Heavenward Thinking.